We've talked a lot about what's happening in the economy and what's happening in the industry. And today's challenges really call for new leadership strategies, right? Under the backdrop of the economic uncertainty, companies have to navigate their return to office, hybrid work. They have different org structures that are going to drive digitally driven organizations. And then, not to overuse AI, but the reality is AI requires different skills and different types of employees. So with all of this change afoot, we're thrilled to have an amazing group of panelists share how they're dealing with all of this. So it's with my pleasure that I get to introduce Sarah Henry, VP of Content, Influencer, and Commerce at Walmart, Jason Nickel, SVP of Marketing at 10,000, Sarah Wallis, COO at Minted, and this panel is moderated by Anish, Shah, CEO at Ruckus.
Hello, everybody. Right off the bat, I love digging into areas where people have highly varying opinions, and one thing we're seeing in the news quite a bit are highly varying opinions about the value of needing to return to the office, or having hybrid work environments, or being fully remote. A lot of loud voices. So I'd love to get your opinions. I'll start with Sarah W. here.
Yeah, so I love this question. There's so much there. And unfortunately, I don't have a straightforward, this is our answer. It really depends, is my perspective. One of the great things that we learned through the pandemic was that there are a lot of things that we'd never considered we could do remotely that we learned we could do. And I think we also learned about a lot of things that we can do remotely, but really are more effective and efficient to do in person. And so, I think the opportunity is that there's a lot more flexibility with how we can structure our work and how we structure work for our employees. The challenge is that it used to be really easy. If you had an office-oriented job, you were just in the office and it was easy. Everybody was treated the same. And now there's more nuance. When I think about my employees, I think about what is their role, what is their responsibility, who are they as a person, what do they need, and what is the right solution for that person. And so it becomes a little more complex and challenging. And I think the flip side from an employee perspective is also thinking through what you want to do with your career. If you have a strong opinion about whether you want to or need to, for whatever reason, work from home or work from an office, that's like one additional consideration that you never really had to think about as you think about what type of role you want to do. And if you really, really want to work remotely and from home, there's probably some roles that aren't right for you. And if you really want to work in the office, there's probably other roles that are right for you.
Very well put. It's not a hard line in the sand, and the answer is really it depends. How about yourself, Jason? Any nuanced thoughts around remote versus hybrid versus in office?
I'll draw a line in the sand.
Oof.
I'm a huge fan of hybrid for many of the reasons you were just mentioning, Sarah. And I think I'd add to it that it creates, there's this really special opportunity for newer associates. I think people that are earlier on in their career to really be mentored and learn some of those soft skills that remote or in office can really benefit you much later and throughout your career. And I'm struck by it's definitely easier, I think, to create a culture in office. We have a lunch table where, weirdly, it's never happened before at any other company. I mean, we've tried to engineer it at other places, but I swear to God, 75–80% of the team eats lunch every day, right? And the founder, the CEO, sits down and eats lunch with Max Neve, who's like a 23-year-old crazy smart BI guy, right? And they talk about football, not our football, soccer. And I swear, WBR is better. It's absolutely better because of the relationship that they form. So I'm a big fan of that, of giving people the flexibility so that you can do things with your family or travel and have that, but also being in office.
I love that. I love the lunch example, and I think it helps soften people up, regardless of seniority in an organization. I feel like certain organizations I was in didn't really have that relationship with some of the higher ups when I was more junior, and just sitting down across for them helps build trust and helps build commonality, and you can joke about some of the same stuff over time.
Exactly.
I also think there's a tendency when you're sitting there on Zoom all day, and I think probably a lot of us in the room have experienced what that can feel like. I do think there is sometimes a tendency to want to rush to the work that needs to be done and the output of what needs to be accomplished on that call. And I think, Jason, to your point, it sometimes comes at the cost of building relationships and deepening connections and culture beyond the work that needs to get done. And that's so important to not only the work that does need to get done, but also the culture that we're all creating, as a collective organization.
That's great. And, it seems all of you are open-minded to remote and hybrid. But as we've shifted over the last few years and all collectively tried to learn, how do you lead teams effectively in a remote and hybrid situation? I would just ask that question. How do you? Any learnings, any anecdotes? I'll start with you, Sarah H.
Sure, yeah. So, look, no doubt that technology has helped us succeed throughout the pandemic and has really enabled us to move quickly, to have active communication, transparency, feedback, things like that. And the desire for that not to go away. We want to retain that. But there also is really a heightened focus on building relationships in person and really the intentionality behind coming together for all the reasons we just talked about. And so for us, really being intentional about the times that we do come together while balancing that with flexibility is super important. And then also fostering an inclusive environment is really important. And inclusivity has lots of different definitions. In this context, it is really about making sure that the perspectives of our teams are heard regardless of whether you are virtual or in person. We have multiple office locations across the country. We routinely are on conference calls where folks are dialing in remotely. We might have an office that has 5 or 6 people in it, might have multiple offices on a call, and that gets really complicated, particularly for rapidly growing teams where people might not necessarily feel as comfortable speaking up, when they haven't been there a bunch of years. And so for us, little things make a big difference. One of the things that we strive to do on my team is if someone is in an office location, also logging into Zoom through their laptop so that everyone has equal representation of their own little bubble on the screen. And really being intentional about making sure that we understand people's preferences of who does like to speak up in large settings and encouraging them to voice their opinions.
Thanks for that. Culture is such a broad term in general. What does it exactly mean? I think that can vary from organization to organization, and how culture is actually created within an organization can vary. Sometimes it comes directly from the CEO. Sometimes there's very intentional teams across the organization who work to, figure out how the culture of their team should work. And, I'd love to know, how your organizations work in terms of setting culture. I'll start with you, Sarah H.
Yeah, sure. At our organization, no one person sets the tone. I would say it really comes down to practicing our values in action, and our values at Walmart really come down to a couple of things, which are service to our customers and providing value for them, acting with integrity, respect for the individual, and striving for excellence. And my team in particular has grown quite significantly in the last year or so. And the way that I describe this to folks interviewing for those roles is we strive to act with urgency and focus on things that are going to provide value for our associates and our customers while being kind, empathetic human beings. And so that's really the tone that we try to set. That's what we try to live and practice every day.
I'd like to think being kind and empathetic should be pretty broad across everybody, but
yeah, maybe in personal life too, just life generally.
Be a decent human, good baseline.
Right.
How about yourself, Jason?
Well, we're a smaller organization as a younger startup, right? And so I do think that perhaps because we're a little tighter, that there's a lot of impact that the CEO and the leadership team have on culture. Though I completely agree that it comes from everywhere within the organization. So I think on our executive team, we spend a lot of time actually managing up and trying to inspire those beneath, around us, right? Those of us on our teams, to think a little bit differently and act collaboratively. It's something that we really strive for, and try to create an environment of curiosity where it's okay to experiment, to be better than yesterday, to use our hashtag, as it were. It requires people to be comfortable enough to take risk. And I think trying to create that in our culture has been one of the biggest and more successful steps that we've taken over the last 18 months, is just creating that place where it is absolutely okay to completely screw up and do it a lot, right? But do it with intention and thoughtfulness, and then be supportive and being vocally self-critical afterwards, but having that safety net there as well.
That's fantastic. And were there any baseline things that you did in an organization or are doing in an organization to allow folks who are at all levels to be empowered to make mistakes versus them thinking, oh my God, if I make this mistake, I might lose my job, or I'm going to get a negative mark on my review, or anything like that?
Definitely. We first started with, I think, transparency around just what good is, right? And trying to establish that sometimes good doesn't always mean winning. Sometimes good is just trying and failing. So setting that up, really reinforcing that from the leadership team, taking extreme ownership of any risks that we take and mistakes that we make along the way, to try to lead by example, and then frankly being kind and empathetic, right? Just understanding that last week there was, we had something happen. Had to run back from a lunch. It was a little thing, came back, everyone was a little worked up, a little concerned, and then so we handled the issue, and then I told them about the time that when I was at Amazon, I basically blew the cost of a house on a video test. I mean, I did it, and we tried it, and everyone was actually really excited that we tried this at Amazon, and then wrote the wiki that said, don't do this, everybody else, right? But
There's still a wiki.
Oh yeah, there's still a wiki. I have a friend, and nobody who works at Amazon should be looking for that, by the way. Very kind. Anyway, but that's what we try to build that, right? Build that foundation. So tactically, it was just taking ownership, I think, of a lot.
And I think too that there is a difference between risk taking and mistakes, right? And so I think it's structuring and helping discuss risk taking with the people who work for you and who you work with, to make sure that everyone's really clear that when you take a risk, it's not just, hey, I think I'm going to take a risk today. It's, okay, here's the information I have. Here's the information I don't have. Here's what our goal is. Here's what I'm filling in with my gut feel around why I think we should take this risk and why I think it will work. Right. You don't take risks that you don't think are going to work. And creating that safe space for, like, if you've been thoughtful and you can really clearly explain why you took a risk, why you made the decision you made, I think that's the structure to put in place to say, like, I'm never going to be mad at you for taking a really well thought out and intentional risk that you believed, and there was some good reason to believe would drive us further. And then I think with mistakes, I think mistakes, it's all about, how that person takes it on, right? Like, I remember being in some training, and they talked about, if you're in a meeting and someone who works for you just completely bombs their presentation, right? You have to understand and ask them, how do you think that went, right? Because your response as a leader to someone who goes, I nailed it, is going to be very different than your response to someone who goes, oh my God, that was the worst thing in the world. My career is over. I need to go find a new job. And, so I think really sort of understanding and getting into it with folks when something has gone wrong, and understanding where they are is a critical point, is a critical aspect. And then finally on mistakes as well, I think it's also really important to communicate that, I had somebody, actually when I worked at Walmart, we had millions of SKUs, and someone inadvertently deleted a folder that took down millions of SKUs and like it wasn't recoverable. And it took, like hours and days to recreate. That's not that person's fault. That's our fault for making it too easy to delete a folder that has millions of SKUs and needs to be recreated, right? So I think there's also that element of sort of understanding that humans are humans, and these things happen, and we need to, when there's something that's that critical that's going to impact sales, like you have to put safeguards in place.
I love that. And I think both of you have really touched upon the point of humanizing yourselves. You both have overseen very large teams. People look up to you, and just being able to say, I've made some mistakes in my day too. It happens. We're not all perfect. And also, I think in school they teach you that cheating is bad. In work life, cheating is good. I mean, before you're about to take a risk, cheat with your friends. Cheat with people who you trust in your professional life. If you're about to go to your boss and suggest something really risky, run that through a few people. I myself have helped people, talk through the risky things that they're looking to propose to their boss, get that reaction, learn from it, and have people help you. You can use the outside world.
I'm not sure that's cheating. I think that's phone a friend.
Fair.
I like the quote.
I think that's super important, though. I don't know if I would call it cheating either, but I do think having a trusted, I'm thinking like your own advisory board, where you're bouncing, Sarah, I love the way you put it, intentional risk areas off of a cross-functional group is really important. I think about our part of the world at Walmart, which is all about emerging customer behaviors. And it's really tapping into where people are spending their time en masse. That could be on TikTok, that could be binge watching, streaming video, et cetera. But it's really creating these moments of product discovery and then combining that with easy ways to shop. And a lot of that is tapping into areas that are very well established, like the world of how we leverage creators and influencers. But a lot of it's still emerging. And so in some ways, you almost have to kind of set yourself up to take intentional risks. And a lot of those things are going to fail. But I do think bouncing off those ideas, having a really clear sense of what you're trying to gain and baseline from those risks, and really getting a cross-functional, again, advisory board that can help you sort of define what those are and test and learn along the way is super important.
Absolutely. And I think what's important, what a lot of executives want to see when their team members make measured risks is, do you understand what the downside of what you're doing is? And did you explain it properly? And then everyone can go and saying, all right, if this completely flops, this is what happened. You've already thought it through, instead of just being like, I want to do this, let's go. And it's like, okay, well, what's the downside? Let's talk through it. And I think more often than not, the downside of certain measured risks is not that massive. Sometimes it is, like a couple of the examples here, but for the most part, things will be all right.
And I think it ties back to your initial question, also around sort of remote and hybrid work, like getting into the conversations about these sort of risk-taking, and like that requires a relationship and a level of trust. And while it certainly is possible to develop a sense of relationship and trust remotely, I would say as intentional as I am and as much as I try, like it is still easier for me to develop those relationships and trust in person. And so I think, the more you can work to develop those relationships with the people around you, the easier it will be to have the conversations about calculated risk-taking and having open and honest feedback conversations when things don't go as you'd planned, whether it's, a mistake or a risk.
Absolutely. And trust comes from knowing your stakeholder, right? Once someone gets the luck to be able to work very closely with you, they're going to learn kind of your ticks, things that you get excited about, things that worry you, and they can come with a very, very thoughtful way of approaching that. So so that's actually a great point. Maybe earn a little bit of trust, and then learn a little bit more about your audience, and then go forward to suggest things that might scare them just a little bit. Unless kind of your head's been in the sand, we've all been reading all the news about layoffs, heavily valued companies, organizations shrinking, and rightfully so. It does frighten a lot of team members to see that in the news so regularly and have them worry about their place within an organization. And I think as leaders, it's helpful to be able to have those difficult conversations with team members and hopefully quell the frights of the team, or just, let them know what's going on. But as I'm sure some of those conversations are going on within all of your organizations, it's not easy. So I don't think there's a perfect answer, but and none of us can predict the future. But I'm curious, what you've been able to do about that, and in terms of taking those difficult conversations on. I'll start with you, Jason.
Well, I think I don't know if it's worse at a startup, but I feel like we're a little incestuous in this space, and that we know, we tend to hear and we gossip a lot about our peers, not just our competitors, but just everybody in the startup space. So there's quite a bit of rumor that goes out, honestly, weekly. I mean, I'm still in an OVOG Slack channel that's just ripe with it from when I was at Outdoor Voices 6 years ago. And so it can be helpful, but then it spreads. I think when you compound that with the news, how we've tried to tackle it, and fortunately we had started this earlier when going back to building trust and trying to create a place where risk, right, is encouraged, appropriate risk, intentional risk. We're very transparent about the business at all hands. I mean, we actually talk about shipped margin with everybody, and what our goals are, and how we're moving every day towards that number. And so I think that, along with just having the trust and the relationships to be able to have I'll take my Jason hat off and just talk to you as just Jason. Outside, you want to go get a coffee, we can talk a little bit about what's going on. And just being honest, we don't have the answers either. We can just tell you how the business is going today, what's going on around us in the space, and also, honestly, from some experience, having gone through a few of these before, these periods of time. So I think just honesty, transparency, clarity, and consistency in communication really helps.
That's great. And I think it just goes right back to humanizing, not saying, well, I can predict the future. The drop is happening on this date.
Right.
None of us can do that perfectly. Shifting gears to something else that's been consistently sort of in the news, AI. Does the emergence or eventual emergence of AI into so many different industries change the way you're looking to hire for your teams? Does it change some of the skills that you're looking to train your teams on? Super curious. I'll start with you, Sarah H.
Yeah, sure. So look, I hear AI is seems to be the hot topic of this event. Lots of thoughts on it. Last year it was the metaverse. Now it's AI.
Yes, it was.
Look, we've been investing in AI for years, and at the end of the day, we are a people-led, tech-powered, omni-channel retailer. And AI has and will continue to play a role in everything that we do. The way that we look at it is that we are using AI to improve processes and experiences for customers and for our associates, and it's really about enabling our associates to move faster and augment their strengths. And at the end of the day, we will continue to be a people-led, tech-powered organization. In terms of hiring, I don't know that it's really changed that much for me. At the core of it, the candidates that we look for the roles that we're hiring are really based on the ability to have a bias towards action, really being able to drive customer and business objectives, a working leader mentality. Every single role across my team, is a blend of strategy and activation, and really people rolling up their sleeves to get the work done. And what's really important, I think, broadly at Walmart, but in particular for our team, is the ability to relationship build with external and internal partners. And no amount of AI is going to solve for that. That's a people-based function. And so really the ability to relationship build beyond the work that needs to get done, to form connections, and to use that that deep connection to influence and drive value for customers and associates will continue to be important for us.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Bringing people onto your team who can figure it out as things evolve and shift, because no one knows where the future holds with AI. Sarah W., any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is no doubt that the AI is going to change how we work, the nature of our roles, and I think we can come at it from a place of fear, or we can come at it from a place of curiosity and excitement and engagement. And there certainly will be roles that are completely obsolete, just as the Industrial Revolution, the world has been evolving. It's probably more rapid with AI. So there will be some roles that are obsolete, and there probably will be some folks for whom it is very challenging. On the other hand, there are going to be completely new roles that never existed before, which will be created, and everything in between. And I just think about what do I need to do as a person, and what will I not need to do, and what can I kind of hand over to AI. And I'll share a personal note. I introduced ChatGPT to my 11-year-old son the other day. He was doing his Parasha Torah portion at school. He wanted to do a Swiss roll that was his project that he had to tie back to it. And he said, well, maybe the jelly on the Swiss roll is like the blood of the goat. And I was like, maybe like the 5th grade doesn't need to hear that. So I went to ChatGPT and was like, tell me 5 ways a Swiss roll connects to this Torah portion. And it spat out 5 really 5th grade appropriate ways to tie the connection. And his eyes lit up and he was like, what is this? And it just made me realize, like, we had spent half an hour debating, like, how are we going to draw this connection in a way that's okay? And like,
right.
And 30 seconds later, ChatGPT had given us an answer, and it sort of translates into my work world. Like, there are a lot of ways that I use it and to be more efficient. Mm-hmm. And I heard someone say, like, maybe before the Industrial Revolution, people were working 6 to 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. The Industrial Revolution happened. We became a more office-oriented culture, 5 days a week, 9 to 5. Maybe AI will take us to a place where we've got a 20 or 30-hour work week because we're all so efficient. Like, wouldn't that be cool?
That would be so cool.
I'd love to work towards that.
That's quite a win for culture building. So Jason, in your best estimate, what is the exact day that AI will take over your job?
It's a Tuesday in 2025. Yeah.
Amazing.
Soon enough. We're stoked about it. My anecdote is the creative crew at 10,000 has just fully embraced this transition as it's a new suite of tools for them. They've approached it with curiosity, and they're not the copywriter. I mean, if you've ever had to name foundation shades or colors for products, I mean, Josh is over the moon with ChatGPT. I mean, it just makes his job a little easier. And I've noticed them becoming, they're incredibly creative, but also better editors, right? Like, going back to that human side of it, we're still editing everything. All of the voice tech, any of the image generation, all the guys are still doing all of the editing. So they're not scared.
Okay, amazing.
But it's a Tuesday in 2025 for me. I'm toast.
If you want a really tactical, like, my mind was blown idea for how to use ChatGPT, if you have a meeting that's recorded, take the transcript, drop it into ChatGPT, and say, write meeting notes for this. Like, it's really good. It's
and
really
summarize
good.
Takeaways.
And takeaways, and like
steps. Yeah, smart.
Yeah, it's not like 100% there. I wouldn't then like send that out to your CEO, but I would read it first.
Right.
But huge time saver.
Oh yeah.
And you think about what that also means is that now if you're going to do that, every single person in the meeting can be totally present and focused on the meeting. Nobody's worried about sort of taking notes and
Yep.
There's
less practical, but on a personal note, very effective in vacation planning as well. Highly recommend.
That's amazing. I like that a lot. Given my day is basically interviewing candidates and scribbling down notes all day,
right.
That would save a lot of effort. We're more or less out of time, so I'll go with one last question. economically, a lot of companies are not in the same place that they were, maybe 2-3 years ago. And I know there's probably some folks in the audience here who are thinking about their next role or preparing themselves to be wonderful candidates for maybe whatever type of role is exciting for them. So, does anything that's happening right now economically affect, how you're interviewing people, what you're looking for in candidates, or not really? I will start with Sarah H.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to. Look, we're looking for hungry candidates who have not only, skills on paper and demonstrate ability to get the work done, but also, goes back to, have the ability to relationship build and influence internal and external stakeholders. And those that have a bias towards action. And so for us, we're actively hiring across multiple areas of the organization, including my team, social commerce, marketing generally, e-commerce, product, technology. Social commerce is a really interesting area of focus for us, particularly in the creator, influencer, and social commerce world. We're hiring anywhere from associate managers to senior directors, and have product and tech counterparts that are also actively hiring in that area as well. So
yeah,
come see me.
in Sarah W, obviously, as your COO of a beloved brand that's probably quite a few people in here use regularly. Thinking about your org structures, hiring plans, all of that is probably very central to your role. So has it shifted at all who you're looking for, what you're looking for, and I guess maybe a more important question, what are you looking for these days?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has, to be honest. I mean, I think, Minted is a marketplace of artists. We believe that, we exist to support artists and creators. And so, when you think about, whenever I'm hiring, I think about what can I teach, what can someone learn, and what needs to be innate, or they already have skills and experience in, and sort of a passion for supporting art and design has always been something that is hard to teach, and so has always been something that we look for, as well as passion for growing a brand. Minted has been around for a while, and is not a small company, but still there's a lot of room to grow and do more to support more artists and more designers. And so having a passion to do that is also really, really critical.
Phenomenal. And Jason N?
No change. Yeah,
okay.
It's simple. Yeah, I mean, we're actually just announced our Series A raise last week. So
I saw that. Congrats.
Thank you. So we're just moving ahead. No plan changes.
Okay. And if any of you want the softest workout gear ever, you won't even know you're wearing the shirts because they're so light. Hit up Jason and 10,000. And also, if you want to have empathetic, humanized, culture-caring bosses, you know where to find a good culture.
And if you want to, the brand Bodega has a minted duffle bag later.
Man.
So
and I'm going to plug the 10,000 hat that I think is getting dropped at 10:15.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Should we live stream it?
We should live stream it. Totally do it. Fantastic hat for running.
Sarah H, Jason, and Sarah W, thanks so much for joining this panel today.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.